You have her ID?
No, I don't want to give it to you. Why do I have to?
Because my attorney said not to.
Why do I have to give it to you? This is evidence. She's under arrest. I have to go with. I have to go. I have to go.
You don't have that choice.
Let me help you out.
No, I have to stay. Please don't do this. Don't stay. You need to grab the bags. Take the bags. Yeah, and you need to wait outside. Okay.
My husband's almost 80 years old. He can't
Yeah,
come
I
with
can't.
me.
Please, can I help?
No, you can't join me there.
Oh, don't do this, please.
Please.
Oh,
Someone's
God.
got to help him get home. This is terrible. You can't do this. This is insane.
Is that okay with you?
Please. You don't have that with handcuffs on. She's not going anywhere. Please. Please.
You have anything in your pocket?
No, no.
Do you have anything of value in you?
No, I
Does she have a necklace on? You
Wanna
can
go?
take the
My-
necklace
I'll
off.
take
Yeah, take it off. Yeah.
And the earrings.
And the earrings, the
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record. Okay. How is everybody? Wanted to talk today about the Donna Adelson disaster that keeps going on and on. Jack Campbell gave a press conference today. So as I predicted, or as I talked about last time we were here, this is not looking good for Tallahassee. It does not make their legal system look good when you have an entire jury ready to go, ready to be voir dired, and the defense counsel quits and the whole trial has to be delayed. It does not look good for the district attorney's office. It does not look good for the entire Tallahassee legal community. It makes people ask, what's going on in Tallahassee? So Jack Campbell gave a entire press conference today. We're going to get into it. We're going to look at it. In addition, Alec Morris, Donna Adelson's new head attorney, gave a interview. We're going to look at that. I am still confused as to what really went on here. We're going to get into your comments, all of it. Deep dive today. Stay tuned. Get a glass of wine, coffee, whatever you want to drink, bubbly water, champagne, and we will get into it all. But I am still confused as to what exactly happened here. I understand that Charlie Adelson met with his appellate attorney in Tallahassee jail, meaning he was set. Why was he in Tallahassee jail and not prison in North Dakota? Well, he was set to testify for the prosecution. For the prosecution, not the defense, for the prosecution. And he did not want to be cross-examined by Dan Rashbaum. So what I'm confused about is the waiver that he signed, that everyone said it was okay, that he gives up his whatever rights and lets Donna be represented by his attorney, meaning he lets his mother be represented by his attorney. He had to re-sign a waiver, and my understanding is that there was no waiver. Did he just rescind the waiver? Or was there supposed to be another waiver at the time of court that he assumed Charlie Adelson was going to sign. If anyone knows the details to this, I've listened to all of the interviews around this case. Even Tim Jansen on STS, and read the Tallahassee piece on it. And Tim Jansen's conclusion was that Rashbaum got too close to the case. Well, yeah. He's like the, see, so I exclude Robert Adelson. I would say he's the fifth Adelson. There's Harvey, there's Wendy, there's Charlie, there's Donna, and then there's Dan Rashbaum. Too close. Should have said no. He couldn't turn down the money. It'll make too many issues. It was up to him. Should have said no. But what I find much more disturbing about Dan Rashbaum is what I see, in my view, is he's taking part in helping Donna to flee. Now, you could say she wasn't his client, but she's still getting legal advice from him at that time. And he's still telling someone that, hey, in my view, this is what he did. We can go over it again if you want one more time, by his own words and what Donna said, what Donna was caught on tape saying, that the grand jury was going to meet. He told Donna, you're going to be indicted Wednesday, November 16th. She got tickets to fly to a non-extradition country on the 13th, Sunday, November 13th. I don't think that is an ethical thing to do for a lawyer. Now, of course, it wasn't illegal, but is it unsavory to say, evade justice and let me help you evade justice? Let me help you be essentially get out before you get in trouble. Yeah. So if anyone's, I don't think that this is actionable as far as this waiver stuff. I think it looks bad. It costs the taxpayers of Tallahassee a lot of money, is poor judgment. But I don't think any bar would take any action on this. That's just my view. I think it's much more disturbing what he did with Donna's vacation, quote unquote, to Vietnam with Harvey. I think that's much more disturbing and ethically icky. This is just sort of doofus, bad lawyering, and it makes him look bad, and it's going to cost more funding for the DA. I mean, I don't know if the DA is working in their budget, but I would think all this Jack Campbell talks about, all the money that it's going to cost to get more jurors back, and that he said we're giving jurors phones in this case. And I wondered what that meant. If anyone knows what that means, how the jurors are going to use their phones. Does that mean that they're going to hand in their phones and use the state's phones for the duration of the case? Is that what that is? Something else? I don't know. I was curious what that meant. So they can watch the media on it? I had no idea why they would give phones to the jurors, but if anyone knows, curious. A lot of interesting things in this Jack Campbell interview. Before we do, let us get into your comments.
We got your comments. We got your comments. You had something to say. You were insightful. Oh, so clever. So Roberta's gonna read your comments. Hey, Roberta, read those comments.
Okay, let's start off with the first one. Lori Romano. Of all the scenarios that could have happened, this is not the worst. Donna is still in jail. No contact with Charlie or Wendy. Charlie is still in prison. No contact with Mummy or Wendy. Dan is off the case. Funny, Lori. Dan's legal career has taken a hit. Donna has to pay for a new attorney, and she hates spending money. True. Charlie will have at least 6 more months of living in his new reality, which I believe will ultimately make him flip. Interesting. Wendy can live in fear for a few more months. We don't have to deal with this 5 days into trial. Harvey is still wondering about the airport lost. He's still lost. So even the Markels haven't gotten their day in court yet. They can rest a little bit more comfortably, knowing this is more aggravation for the Adelsons. Well, I think they are still talking. I know they're not supposed to, but I do think they all communicate through Dan Rashbaum. It's just what I've seen done. And you know, one of the things I talk about on this channel is these attorneys seem to, especially defense attorneys, take real liberties with the ethics of their profession, and they don't get in trouble with it, rarely. And it's gotten to sort of like they're going way out of bounds, because they know they can. Just my feeling. Sunshine Jen says, prediction, she hires Alan Jackson. Speaking of going way out of bounds of the ethics of your profession. Exactly, Sunshine Jen. Exactly what I'm talking about. Like making your own things up, leaking them to bloggers, and then citing the bloggers as it was in the news, like in your own legal briefs, those kind of things. Having relationships with your clients, allegedly. So Sanyo 8 says, I've been thinking, I wonder if Georgia let this happen. She's not stupid. She sure isn't. She's an FSU professor too, but the only way to break up this RICO-ish crime family, enmeshed Florida's lawyers clan, was to let them implode. If she forced Dan off the case, if Georgia stood up and said, where is Charlie's waiver? If Georgia told the court, Judge, I don't think this is a waiverless conflict, and Judge incited the law, the Adelsons may have been like a gang of spoiled brats and clung together tighter. Now they've exploded, and every conspirator to themselves. Georgia needed this close-knit, trusting clan to blow up. It just did. Charlie is now thinking for himself. I don't know about that. Well, his tally lawyer is. Donna is left hanging in the wind. Who cares? She can't get in Charlie's ear anymore to keep him in line. Wendy, she's a what? Jeffrey Lacasse said, meaning as I think you mean a psychopath. So who knows what she thinks, but Harvey wants his money back. Stapled, please. His moldy money back. Is that right, Sanyo? Alex Morris says no more South Miami lawyers, and I'm talking to Georgia now, and all possibilities are open. Boom. So yeah, they're talking about a plea deal here. And I have my opinions on this and a lot of other things. Georgia got some room to move. She's got 3 to 5 more months to poke around and let Charlie's lawyer work on him. Let Harvey scramble and do whatever an 80-year-old raging father can. Maybe cuts off Charlie's prison's funds, trying to pressure him to give Donna back. Dan Rashbaum signed the damn waiver with blood. Yikes. Did Georgia just lob that grenade into Donna, Dan, and Harvey and Wendy? I don't think Georgia did it. But they needed a signed waiver before before this, clearly. Clearly, I can show you. Hold on one second. Let me just show you these court motions by Charlie. You may have seen them before. So state witness Charles Adelson files this notion and alleges Mr. Adelson was previously charged in Leon County with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation to commit murder. Case number blah, blah, blah. The case proceeded to trial, and Mr. Adelson was convicted as charged. At trial, Mr. Adelson was represented by Daniel Rashbaum, Esquire. Mr. Adelson's judgment is not final. His case is currently pending on direct appeal. Mr. Adelson is now represented by undersigned counsel Michael Uferman and Laurel Cornell Niles. In this instance, the case filed an amended answer to demand for discovery. The document listed additional prosecution witnesses, one of whom was Mr. Adelson. Mr. Adelson's attorney, Dan Rashbaum. The state has issued a subpoena for trial for Mr. Adelson. So, meaning like when they listed who on the witness list, Dan Rashbaum was listed as his attorney. And Mr. Adelson was transported from prison to Leon County Jail on Friday, September 13th. How ominous. Friday, September 13th. Perfect day for him to be transported. Undersigned counsel Uferman was able to meet with Mr. Adelson at jail on Saturday, September 14th. The trial in Mrs. Adelson's case is scheduled to begin the week of September 16th. But we all know what happened there. Mr. Rashbaum is one of the defense attorneys who will be representing Mrs. Adelson during her upcoming trial. The Sixth Amendment to the United States, the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution, states that all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. The essence of the Sixth Amendment right is privacy of communication with counsel. The attorney-client privilege is the oldest of privileges for confidential communications known to the common law. Its purpose is to encourage full and frank communication between attorneys and their clients, and thereby promotes broader public interest in the observation of law and administration of justice. The Florida Bar, entitled Conflict of Interest, former client, states the following: a lawyer who has formally represented a client in a matter must not afterwards represent another person, in the same or substantially related matter in which that person's interests are materially adverse to the interest of the former client, unless the former client gives informed consent. Well, he did give informed consent, is my understanding. Did he not? Was there never a waiver signed? That's what I'm confused about. Use information relating to the represented to the disadvantage of the former client, except as these rules would permit or require with respect to clear client would permit or require with respect to a client, or when the information has become generally known, or reveal information relating to the representation, except as those rules would permit or require with respect to a client. So it goes on. Thus, because Mr. Rashbaum previously represented Mr. Adelson, Mr. Rashbaum currently represents Mrs. Adelson. The state has subpoenaed Mr. Adelson as a witness for Mrs. Adelson's trial, signaling its intent to call Mr. Adelson as a witness during the trial. And if Mr. Adelson is called as a witness by the state during, hold on one second. During Mrs. Adelson's trial, Mr. Adelson would be subject to cross-examination by Mr. Rashbaum, his former defense attorney. Mr. Rashbaum files this pleading, formally invoking his Sixth Amendment rights as to Mr. Rashbaum, his former trial counsel, and Mr. Adelson specifically asserts that he does not waive the conflict of interest regarding his attorney-client communications with Mr. Rashbaum. Further, unless there is a finding by a court that Mrs. Adelson's defense team constructed an ethical wall with regard to Mr. Rashbaum's knowledge and information gleaned from his prior representation of Mr. Adelson, from the initiation of its representation of Mrs. Adelson in the same or substantially related matter, Mr. Adelson would assert that his privilege and the conflict of interest applies to the entire defense team, meaning get rid of the entire defense team. So what happened Wednesday was that Judge Everett brought in Alex Morris, and he is okay for now, which is certainly iffy that he's been walled off enough from anything that Dan Rashbaum knew about this case, but he could go too. So there, anyway, wherefore state witness Charles Adelson prays this court will protect his Sixth Amendment right to the privacy of communications with trial counsel Dan Rashbaum, and in conformance with applicable rules regarding the Florida bar, preclude the defense team of Donna Adelson from cross-examining him. And so I really think that I don't think he minded much when he didn't think he was going to be a witness in this case. And also anything that can help him with his appeal. But like I've always said, maybe they're all closer to flipping. Alex Morris talks about in this interview, let's get into it, about making a deal with the prosecution, and Jack Campbell talks about it. We're going to explore it all today. It's a short interview with Alex Morris. Let us take a look.
Now, what went through your mind as all this was happening?
Well, I don't know that it matters how I'm feeling. It's been a stressful day for Mrs. Adelson, no doubt about that. For lawyers, these things happen, and there are legal arguments that have to be made, and it's part of our job, of course. But so, a legal issue resolved, and on to the next challenge.
Can you just talk about what happened? I know folks at home might not understand what attorney-client privilege is, or what the Sixth Amendment allows folks when they're on trial.
Sure. Charlie Adelson's counsel filed a notice advising that Mr. Adelson was not consenting to his former counsel cross-examining Mr. Adelson on the witness stand. That expanded to Mr. Adelson saying that he no longer consented to Mr. Rashbaum's continued representation of his mother. There was agreement amongst the parties originally, and that agreement came to an apparent halt based on Mr. Offerman's pleading.
So they had an agreement, but did they have a signed agreement? That's what I'm wondering. Thanks, Dan Lawrence, for the super chat. Appreciate it. Anyone know? Try to put some kind of, can they impeach Wendy? Misha's asking. Can they impeach Wendy and then basically cross her with no limitation? Yes. So what they'd have to do is they would have to charge her with perjury in some way, because my understanding of the agreement to give her limited immunity was under the idea that she testified truthfully. And there's so many, I believe, provable lies in that testimony that you could have to prove perjury first, and then to get rid of any kind of castigar issues, which are that you can't use anything that she says on the stand, or you have to prove that anything she said on the stand can't be held against her, meaning you didn't use it as a springboard to investigate something. But does anyone know if Dan Rashbaum actually had something signed and was handed into the court? Try to make some kind of emoji, red emoji, so I can see it. Okay, Maui Swift saying Rashbaum said they had one in December. Right, but has anyone seen it? That's what I'm wondering. And attempted to get one from Charlie the day of trial, but his appeal lawyer advised him against it. I'm wondering if they ever had it and just was like, Charlie said it was okay from prison. I wouldn't think that the court would be okay with that. So it was never signed. He never had it? Ever had one of these things? I know he says now he was in Tallahassee jail and he couldn't get it signed. I'm just confused as to the timeline. Okay, thank you. So thank you, Kendall B. During an interview that was conducted by STS, Rashbaum admitted that it was not a signed waiver. So he never had anything signed. That's what I don't understand, is how the judge was like, okay, go forward. And just took Rashbaum's testimony that it was okay. Rashbaum says he signed on Charlie's behalf. How was that okay? How did the court accept that? So that's my little issue with the judge there. I know he could have rescinded it and we could have been in the same spot. But this seems odd to me that the judge didn't demand a signed waiver. I have nothing against Judge Everett, but that seemed like a bad judgment on his part.
Yeah, sorry. I'm like, I don't want to.
I was going to ask, but I literally couldn't even hear what he said. I don't even know what you asked and what he said.
I asked just, could you explain that? I explained it.
Okay.
I can do it again without semis if you want.
Do it.
Please. So Charlie Adelson's attorney filed a notification that Mr. Adelson was notifying the court that he had an objection to Mr. Rashbaum conducting cross-examination of Mr. Adelson because of his prior representation. That expanded to Mr. Adelson's objection that Mr. Rashbaum continue representation of his mother. As a result of the objections, where there once was agreement, there are now objections. Mr. Rashbaum is withdrawn from the case. We're going to figure out what lawyers we're going to use to go forward and keep that out.
That's fine.
Keep that out. Well, they didn't, right? They didn't. They didn't keep that part
Are
out.
you going to represent Donna Adelson, though, as her lead counsel?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, we'll be proceeding forward with myself as lead counsel, and we're looking into what other lawyers may be associated with the case.
Someone local, perhaps, or
It would be.
okay, not someone out of state. Sorry, down south or whatever.
No, I don't have a belief that it would be anyone down south at this point. I anticipate somebody local.
And then everyone knew about this. Everyone knew about how fraught with difficulty this situation was with the same lawyer, Mr. Rashbaum, representing Charlie and Donna. How did we get here? If everyone knew that, how did we end up with a continuance today?
Well, I think everyone knew that the conflict existed or the potential of the conflict. There were waivers in place that seemingly resolved the conflict issue. But as is anyone's right in that circumstance, their consent or their permission was revoked. And as a result, that brought a termination to that game plan, if you will, and necessitated a different one. And that's the reason for the continuance.
And what we really saw was this conflict between Charlie Adelson's desire to have a thorough appeal and his mom in a criminal trial. May not have said that very artfully, but
ultimately, the question is whether or not their positions are at odds with one another, and there's absolutely the potential of that. And that's the issue.
Right. So also when you're in prison for a while, and Albert, I'll want to answer your comment in a second. When you're in prison for a while, it becomes less important to you to please your mother. Your mother who left you was going to, be there till the end for you. And granted, Harvey did say we have to be in phone communication with Charlie, vote or somehow be in communication with him wherever we're at. That was a consideration, but that's hardly support in the way that you need it. You really need those visits from your family. Phone time is savored in prison, but the prison visits are everything for prisoners with their family. And they couldn't do that in Vietnam, especially when you're a fugitive of justice, basically, essentially. Albert says, in my opinion, Judge Everett should not have allowed Rashi to represent Donna, even with a waiver from day one. Well, the problem with that, Albert, is that Donna has a Sixth Amendment right to choose her counsel. So it could have been, had he done that, it could have been appealed on those grounds. I really put this, my issue with Everett is that I don't think that is to say, well, I'm signing for Charlie Adelson. I understand he's in prison. He can still get mail. And there was no delay. We had all these months. And I understand he could have rescinded at any time. But to me, this issue was never really cleared up in that way. I would have felt better about this whole thing going down if he said, oh, I rescind it. I rescind my waiver. Fine. But at least he would have had one. That's ridiculous to go into this and the judge be like, oh, it's okay. You're going to sign for Charlie? You, Daniel Rashbaum, who have a monetary incentive to say it's all okay? I mean, I guess to say, to not really talk it all through with Charlie Adelson, et cetera, et cetera. That's why you need signed forms to really understand that the person who's rescinding their rights understands what they're giving up in a waiver. That's why you put it in writing. I would do you get everybody understand my position? I feel a lot better about the way this debacle went down if there was actually a signed waiver, even if Charlie Adelson pulled this move, which is fine. It's his right.
When there are changes of counsel like what happened today, can you kind of speak to how long it takes other attorneys and lawyers to kind of study up on the case to be ready to go to trial?
Fortunately, I'm in a reasonably good position in terms of familiarity, but as I stated to the court, I do need an opportunity to catch my breath and catch up on the things that I'm not as familiar with. So me personally, I don't think there's a huge learning curve to it. For another lawyer just to pick it up and figure things out, there's more of a learning curve. This case was calendared for trial relatively quickly in the big picture. It's a 2023 case at the end. of 2023, but it's roughly 9-10 months after arrest, which is abnormal. So I would think that by the time that the matter gets to trial, it would be a normal passage of time, if you will.
When do you think that the trial would occur?
Discussions have been had with the state that sometime between November and January, early February. So we're working.
November, January, or February. Okay, well, that's earlier than we thought. Be like a birthday present for me if it happens in February. I mean, what are we talking about here? Boy, was that vague. And that's what I said. I said, oh, this is so fast. Everyone said, oh, it's so long, because they were going to even do it. I think Donna didn't want to waive her right to a speedy trial at first, and they were going to do it in months. And I thought this was awfully quick. I said it at the time, trial date. I've been very used to the federal trials that I had been attending just being delayed and delayed and delayed for various reasons.
Working on a calendar right now.
Okay. Donna Adelson was crying in court, wiping her eyes, and looked very clearly upset.
This is why I hate journalists do this. There were no tears coming out of their eyes. They always humanize these monsters. Donna Adelson wanted to make it look like she was crying. Let's put it that way. Donna Adelson wanted to give off the appearance of being upset. Was Donna Adelson upset? What were Donna, why don't you ask something a little bit more neutral? Like, what were Donna Adelson's feelings? We saw her put a tissue to her eye. How about that? A little bit more accurate. I remember the 2020 about Karen Reed. Oh, she was so upset. She was so upset. She's performing hysterics, in my opinion. They really humanize these monsters.
Can you say what was going through her mind, or did she articulate that to you?
I don't know that she articulated what was going through her mind, but I can pretty accurately tell you that you develop a relationship with the lawyer and a connection, the recognition that that connection is going to be broken, and how am I going to go this on my own without you, is absolutely a feeling that the client has, and it's distressing, stressful. The whole situation is stressful in the first instance, but she understands, and put one foot in front of the other and get the case to a jury as quickly as we can.
What happens to Katie McVanoa and Charlie? Do they all go back to their respective prisons? Are they going to stay in Leon? Do you have any idea?
I would imagine that the state will begin its process of releasing and returning witnesses. I can tell you on my end of things, that's one of the...
I mean, you know how costly this whole thing was? I mean, the worst cost is to the Markels, who've been living in this kind of trial hell for 10 years. But aside for that, this is all I would think. The DA's office is funded by the taxpayers of Tallahassee, I would think. Their budget. I don't know. Florida has odd taxes. Certainly less taxes than than a lot of the other states in America. But I would think that this would be on ultimately on the taxpayers' dime, or in some way.
The immediate things that I went back to do is to let witnesses know that they're released from subpoenas and cancel travel arrangements, because there's been an awful lot of effort that's been put into this.
Right. How disappointed were you that it came to this?
Because of preparation and being ready to go for the benefit of the client, I'm disappointed that it came to this. I wanted Mrs. Adelson to be able to have her day in court as quickly as possible. But I have to be reasonable and practical.
Is that part of why she was upset too?
Am I the only one thinking that Alex Morris here feels relieved to have? I mean, I know anyone going to trial would feel excited to have more time. I know lawyers, lawyers always want more time, but isn't this like a little, doesn't he seem a little too, a little too happy? He's disappointed for my client, but I'm personally, doesn't he seem a little psyched to have more time? And he doesn't have to hang out with Rashbaum and pretend to be interested in poker or whatever else he talks about. I don't know. Curious how they got along. And Adam Kamazar, I'm so curious as to how long he's going to stay on the case. It was very mixed. I took a poll last time we talked about this, and it was pretty much 30% said 1 day, 32%, said 1 month. And I think only a smaller percent said all the way. And I think 30% said all the way. So, I mean, I think we're really divided on this if he'll last. He looks way too, at least from the the outside, way too much of an straight shooter for criminally minded Donna, but okay, let's see how long he lasts.
Did she want to go to trial this week and get this done? And
Yes, absolutely. I mean, her desire is for the jury to be able to listen in judgment of the facts and be able to get the case to the jury as quickly as we can.
I know that you just spoke to, she's sad that she can't go to trial right now. You're upset that you can't get that trial moving quicker. But would you say that this is all kind of for the best in the long run?
I think so. I think that it's going to open up opportunities as it relates to negotiations. I think that it opens up pathways to and exploring different defenses that may not have been previously available. I think that it makes the situation potentially easier and in the best interest of both Mr. Adelson and Mrs. Adelson in terms of having lawyers advocate for them.
you mentioned the word plea. Do you expect that there didn't seem to be a lot of plea negotiations between the parties from the outside, at least?
Oh, you never know. Ms. Kappelman says, stay tuned, right?
Right. He wants to plea her out. He thinks Donna is going, I think he's deluded. Donna's not admitting anything. If she plead out to anything, it would be like, I don't know what. Unwillingly assisting my son in commission of a crime with a 2-year penalty. By the way, yesterday, I went to the sentencing hearing. Maybe I'll do a Patreon on that. But New York sentences are ridiculous. That's all I have to say. That's all I have to say. You want to commit a crime, New York City, it's like sending out the message, do it here. Do it here. Crime pays over here. That's all I have to say.
Did she say that? I might have missed that. Or she said, I'm sorry, she said that last year. She said that last year.
She said, stay tuned in terms of who's going to be prosecuted. So
right.
I say that a little tongue in cheek, but you never know. There are ways of resolving very difficult cases, and this may open up an opportunity for different dialogue.
Resolve it outside of trial, you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
See, like lawyers never want to actually try these cases because it's a lot of work. They much rather have these people plea out. But if he thinks he's getting the state, first of all, you'll hear what Jack Campbell has to say, the state attorney, Jack Campbell has to say about all of this plea deal. I'm going to take a quick break. We'll get into it. But if they have to go to the Markel family, and the Markel family, Ruth Markel has been very direct with her feelings that Donna Adelson was the one running the show here and put this into motion and demanded that it put into motion. She was the engine. She calls her the conductor conducting the orchestra. So if they think that they're going to make some plea deal like, oh, we want to give Donna Adelson 2 years or, for some little petty something or other, I don't think it's going to go down that. And I like that. I don't think there's going to be any agreement. This is a dead end. And if he knew Donna Adelson better, yeah, I think he'd know it as a dead end. She's not going to plea out to, I mean, anything is really, I mean, at her age, she's what, in her 70s? I don't think the Markels would accept anything under a 20-year sentence. That's a life sentence. So what is he going to plea out? But to save her money for what? For what? She'd rather roll the dice. This is not, no. That's what I'm thinking. No way. I would be so shocked. I will be the first one to stand up and say, I didn't see it coming if there's some kind of plea deal between the state and Donna Adelson. But stay tuned, right? So stay tuned. I'm going to take a minute break. Don't go anywhere. I will be right back. We're going to watch Jack Campbell's state's attorney, his really very frank and compelling, open interview today that he just did today, a couple hours ago. Don't go anywhere.
A glass of wine. Roberta will be back in no time. This podcast is listener supported, so smash that like button and subscribe or become a patron for exclusive content if you are so inclined. Have something to say? Shoot Roberta a super chat. She will do her best to read it on air without delay. Now Roberta's back and ready to put the true back in true crime. Here's Roberta.
Okay, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about the whole debacle with Donna Adelson. State's attorney Jack Campbell gave an interview a couple hours ago. Very revealing. He says he's open to plea negotiations with Donna Adelson's team. But his priority is, of course, the Markel family. Let's get into it. Thanks, WCTV. This is courtesy of them. Let me move forward, shall we? I didn't realize this started so late. Starts like 10 minutes in. Sorry, guys.
All right.
Are we rolling?
Yes. Great. So, initial thoughts from what we saw on Tuesday morning.
Disappointment, frustration. The team has worked unceasingly on this case. An extraordinary amount of effort's been done, and of course, worst of all for the Markel family, who's been on an emotional roller coaster for all these years now, and was literally in the airport coming here, hoping to understand. They still seek those answers. So those were the emotions that we were filled with.
Were they in the airport in Canada, or had they arrived?
Between they were in an intermediate.
Okay.
As you know, there's no direct flight from Canada to Tallahassee. So, so they were, but they were, some were already in the air, some were just packing and coming. But I mean, to us, this is a very important case. To them, that's their family.
When you say someone, was Shelley coming to, and the parents?
Yeah, I'd rather let them speak for exactly who it was, but
that's fine.
instead of telling and I don't want to invade their personal privacy. I expected the entire family to get in, and obviously Shelley's been here for that as well as the parents. So.
And I know a lot of work, like you said, has been done to bring this case to trial. Jurors were summoned. There were witnesses transported from other states. Can you kind of talk about the burden that this placed on the court?
And the community. This is an extraordinary case. We had literally hundreds, 150, I think y'all know, were coming in the morning. So 600 people were summoned for jury, potential jurors for this. Like I said, for at least the last month, Georgia and Dugan had spent pretty much continuous work on this case, as well as all of the witnesses were getting spun back up, as well as secretaries and victim advocates and administrative people. And, a lot of people, it has been done on the bump and the audio recordings. We were bringing in AV experts so that we could set that up. Court administration had done extraordinary things, trying to get 3G set up. You all in the media have to coordinate your press. All of that, there's a tremendous amount of work that goes on behind the scenes, and all of that was ready to go. And while, yes, there's a financial cost to that, more significantly to me is the emotional investment, because we recognize here, Georgia and Sarah Catherine understand the weight of what the issues they're dealing with. I think the judge certainly understands the weight of the defense. And we were ready for resolution. We were ready for answers. And certainly the Markel family is, every time this is a nightmare for them. And we continue to scrape over that wound and open it up again. And I hate doing that to them.
Well, yeah, I mean, the trial part of this can never see total justice be done. It just drags on and on and on. But he's like, we're scraping open a wound as if it heals. This wound doesn't heal. It's a life sentence of grief is what these victims' families have to deal with. But, I think my dad used to say, ourselves are, everybody's favorite subjects is themselves, right? We're thinking about ourselves most of the time just to survive in this, in this world. So, of course, I had planned how, for Donna's trial and beyond as to the pacing of my show and what I was going to do. Everything in the last month was all about the Adelson family in this case and building up to Donna's trial. So it was like quite a shock, quite a shock for me to have to sort of say, okay, what can we plan on next? And are they going to say pick a January date and then move it again? Is Alex Morris going to be booted off this case because he wasn't sufficiently insulated? And then are we looking at like next September, or are we looking at like say spring? I mean, am I going to be wrong? Is Adam Commissar going to be like the only one of all the three of them going to be left when this finally goes to trial? What do you guys think? But he uses, I really, appreciated that Jack Campbell did this. But what he's saying is, he is saying that this is an important case. We understand that the eyes of the world, not just the eyes in America and in Tallahassee, are on this case. And I'm not saying everyone in the world knows this case, but this is a very famous case as far as true crime cases go. And he understands the import of it. And it's an extraordinary case as far as how long it's taken and how many conspirators there are. And just, in fact, not too many families conspire to kill together. I know there are a few, but not like this. It's a wild case.
And I know
source had told us of a timeline between possibly November and February for that new trial, or I guess the existing trial to happen. Is that the understanding of the state attorney's office as well?
I think that's optimistic. I would be happy if that was true. As you all have seen in other murder trials, once again, everything I just said has to get ready to go again. We will be ready whenever the court says be ready. I mean, I could be ready in 60 days. Alex obviously has the unique perspective of knowing what he knows and what he doesn't know. So as he's taking over as the lead defense attorney, he understands how long it would take him to get ready. But then you have the issue of, and we had a murder verdict came in last night. We had 2 murder trials last week. We have murder trials set for other families every week in, week out. We have over 100 people charged with murder in the Leon County Jail right now. Those families continue to wait for justice and resolution to their cases. And so as important as the Markel case is, we also have to have it coordinate, once again, with all the witnesses, with the court, with the prosecutors. Once again, Sarah Catherine and Georgia are working with other families. They've made promises there that they're trying to get justice for those. And so trying to get a situation where, quite frankly, we will probably have to move other murder trials out of the way if we were to do it. I know that Sarah Catherine and Georgia have multiple murder trials set after Markel. Now those would, so because we had set this aside, I know that they have trials set in October. I know they have trials set in November. December is a difficult time to try cases because of the holidays. A lot of people travel. Obviously, there's the emotional, whether it be Hanukkah or Christmas, to trying to put this family through a trial during that time. All of those are issues that we would have to coordinate. So I have no reason to disagree with what Alex said on that. He would know best how long it'll get him to be ready. But my experience is that the logistics, he is one part, and a very important part, but he's one part of a very large orchestra that has to be brought together, which includes Judge Everett's schedule, court reporter schedules, witnesses schedules, and all of these other people. As you've seen, we literally called dozens of witnesses. I don't know where they are supposed to be. And we cancel people's vacations on a regular basis, but it's a lot to ask. And then you have, is somebody having surgery? We already went one time, as you'll recall, when the lead detective had some cardiac issues and was unable. So there's just all of those types of logistical things that we try to bring together. We try to coordinate, and you're talking about trying to coordinate calendars of at least 100 people. And once again, to quote Judge Everett, we want to do it right. So I want to do it in such a way that we can get justice. I want to do it in such a way that the community is ready to hear it. If I were to subpoena or summon 300 witnesses on Christmas week, that would be hard. So I think it could easily get past the holidays, and from there, I just don't know, because once again, we have these other trials, and where all of these attorneys will be ready, it's hard for me to speculate.
Right. He's saying it's going to be way longer than that. That's what I hear. I don't even hear February. I hear 8 months is what I hear there. 8 months, because we have to get all the witnesses, all the other trials that they're also doing. Some of those are going to have to be moved. I mean, all really because Dan Rashbaum couldn't say no to Donna. He couldn't say no to the money. And he's enmeshed. Let's not forget the money. I mean, there's a lot of lawyers who would want the big bucks that come with defending someone like Donna Adelson. And I'm sure Dan Rashbaum did it for at least $1 million, maybe more. That's my speculation on what I heard Charlie Adelson's trial cost. It was like $1 million or $1.5 million, something like that.
Was this the fault of anyone in particular?
Obviously, our position is that it's the fault of the people who killed him. I wouldn't be doing a murder trial if I didn't have a murder. So I don't hold anybody lately to fault. I understand how it happened. It was something that the moment we found out that she was going to be represented by the same lawyer as her son, that there were possible conflict issues, we raised them with the court. We raised them with the defense. Clearly, we thought that they had addressed them through these previous waivers. We wouldn't have gotten this far and done all the things we did if we didn't think we were going to go to trial this week. So is it somebody's fault? Yeah, I still hold the murderers accountable, all of them. But as far as is the delay somebody, I'm not. I don't have any malice towards any of the lawyers, and I do believe in the Constitution, and what we're dealing with here is the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution, the right to counsel. And it was interesting because it's a double Sixth Amendment issue. She had the right to the lawyer of her choosing, which happens to be the same Sixth Amendment decision that her son. They both have the right to the lawyer of their.
That's right, Jack. I picked Rashbaum. I picked him because he was a wonderful lawyer. A wonderful lawyer, and now he's been taken from me. Taken from me. What about my issue? And my son comes in and says, no Rashbaum? It's terrible. It's terrible. It's Tallahassee. These people are so stupid. That's what she'd say.
They're choosing. So it really turned into mother versus son's right to Mr. Rashbaum, and put him in an untenable position where he finally pulled the ripcord. But that's kind of where we are. Is we don't.
All right. Thanks, Tammy, for this super sticker. Nice to see you. Pat's to Gizmo. The kitty.
Decide who somebody's lawyer is. It's a Sixth Amendment right to counsel. She had counsel. He had counsel. They actually chose to have the same counsel. We thought that we had covered the watershed the waterfront with all the different conflict issues. We had brought it up. We had raised it with the judge. The judge had raised it with each of them. And we obviously had enough confidence that we did everything to get ready. Unfortunately, it didn't work out despite our best efforts. But there's nothing I think that we could have done differently, because at our position, once again, you start Monday morning quarterbacking it. Okay, so if we had raised objections to Mr. Rashbaum representing Miss Adelson, that would have been a violation of her Sixth Amendment rights to be able to. That's the same right that allows people to represent themselves, which I think is a terrible idea, particularly in a murder trial. But once again, people every year choose to represent themselves on very serious charges. And it's the Sixth Amendment of our Constitution that guarantees that right, which is what we were dealing with here. Is she should be able to choose the lawyer that does it. It just came to a loggerhead where those two Sixth Amendment rights crashed into each other. And once again, you would have thought that mother and son would have been able to coordinate that, and they had thought it through. I can't get into any of their minds, but that's where we ended up.
This wasn't the result of some intentional sabotage by some party?
Nothing that I can find, nor could I think of. Once again, everything that I've seen, I believe that justice delayed is justice denied. I think this case has gone on way too long at this point. I always want to bring justice to my victims as quick as I can. Just on a fundamental ideological standpoint, that I try to bring it so that they can move on. And as I tell my victims, I want them to be able to focus on how their loved one lived, not on how they died. Every time we do this, we're focusing on how he died. So I want that for the Markels. On the flip side, I don't see any tactical advantage in this situation. Generally, cases as they get older, witnesses die, memories.
But these families don't have closure. There is no closure for these families. This is a life sentence of grief. What you're doing is getting them beyond the trial stage. I hate when they say like, oh, we just want them to move on and focus. I mean, that's nice. Focus on how their loved one lived, but this is a wound that doesn't heal. I mean, we talk about justice. Sorry to my friend, about it. And she said, you know, there really is no justice for taking a person's life. You know, we can put someone in jail. We can, I mean, however you feel about the death penalty. But there is no making it right. This wound is so deep and it doesn't heal. I mean, we can only do the best we can as human beings, is what I'm saying. Not suggesting that we do something else, something more extreme. Not suggesting that. Just saying that this kind of language around this, like, oh, we just want them to, we don't want them to, we want them to have closure and all that stuff. There's no closure. There is no closure.
On the flip side, I don't see any tactical advantage in this situation. Generally, cases as they get older, witnesses die, memories fade, things like that. I don't like older cases. I would rather get it done for logistical reasons as well. But here, we were already fairly old. I don't think that this was set up. I have no villain that I can say. I think if they had, I have every reason to believe that if they had realized that we were going to be here, they would have got another lawyer on board, which is what you saw in those last hours with the judge and bringing in even new lawyers, trying to everybody kind of scrambling, can we save this? That to me speaks to the sincerity of the defense's wishes to go to trial.
So from the state's perspective, do you believe that this waiver issue could have been avoided or dealt with in any way before?
We thought we did. I mean, once again, we everything that
we thought we did. How about the judge looking at a signed waiver? I mean, you know, I understand that it could have been rescinded at any moment, and the wisest thing for Rashbaum to do was just to say no. I get that. But the fact that there was nothing in writing bothers me deeply. Where we understood so that even if Charlie changed his mind, that he understood at some point what he was giving up. Because we're not privy to these conversations. So Sally A says Rashbaum didn't get a signed agreement, just verbal, even though an STS, which is what I always say, right? Wait, hold on. Even though an STS, Sally A continues, interview, he said he had a signed agreement from Donna, Charlie, and Harvey. Interesting. Sally A. I've been meaning to revisit that interview. I just haven't had the time. Been working. So I just think that the issue is what I always talk about is that lawyers can lie. It's okay to lie to documentary crews, podcasters. It's very different when you're taking an oath in court. I mean, I guess they could bring in that statement, I mean, in some kind of proceeding against his law license and say you misrepresented this. Certainly that doesn't look good for Rashbaum. But I would marry this. I mean, if you're going to report him, I would marry this with all the other things he's done. Right? I mean, anyone remember him telling Donna to flee? I mean, should I play this tape one more time? I mean, it's only a few minutes, so I guess I will. Anyone remember this? This is Dan Rashbaum on STS.
Set this up. So this is a wiretap between Donna and Charlie, which I should have set up earlier. And she's talking to Charlie. This is now after the conviction. I'm sorry, this is a jailhouse call after the conviction. And Donna invokes a name, and it is Dan. Let's listen one more time, then I'll ask Dan some questions. They're actually from Patreon member Bobby.
So after speaking to Dan this morning and knowing what they're thinking up there, and I don't know if we'll make it out in time. I really don't. Because Dan said, you might, or you might do all of it, get to the airport, and they'll stop. And that could happen. It could happen. I don't know, but it's worth a try.
Your cell phone? No, I didn't want to give it to you. Why do I have to?
Because my attorney said not to.
Why do I have to give it to you? Well, this is evidence. Evidence. Do me a favor. She's under arrest. You can hold on to that.
Dan, I got to say, this doesn't look too good either, what they call a bad fact. Is it you that she is referring to? And did you have prior knowledge of her flight?
So I'm going to read what I've written here so I don't screw this up. Because I anticipated this question would come. I can't talk about what I said or didn't say because it's privileged. What I can say is that at the time Donna Adelson went to the airport, she was a free woman. What I can say is there was no indictment to anyone's knowledge. We know now there wasn't one. There was no grand jury that we knew was convened. We know now it wasn't convened till after. And there was no arrest warrant that was known of. In fact, we know the arrest warrant, I think, was just obtained hours before the flight. Again, she had offered to surrender at any point in time from 2016 on. I know that because I had made that offer. She did nothing wrong by going to the airport. Okay. Now, I cannot tell you what I advised her, what I knew, or what I didn't know. But what I can tell you for certain is that I acted within my ethical obligations. And what I can tell you for certain is that no crimes were committed by her going to the airport. And that's why she wasn't charged with any sort of crimes related to that.
So after speaking to Dan this morning and knowing what they're thinking up there, and I don't know if we'll make it out in time, I really don't. Because Dan said, you might, or you might do all of it, get to the airport, and they'll stop us. And that could happen. It could happen. I don't know, but it's worth a try.
Okay. So, I mean, this is lawyer talk. We knew that there wasn't an indictment. You knew an indictment was likely. You knew the grand jury. The grand jury hadn't convened. We knew they hadn't convened. You knew it was convening. That's the allegation, Dan Rashbaum, that you knew all those things were likely to happen that Wednesday, November 16th. You can say there's nothing illegal about it, but it's certainly unethical for your profession to help someone flee before you think that they're going to get indicted. Yes. And you mean, you can say she wasn't your client, but she was asking you as already you were so enmeshed in the family. So your son's lawyer, you're next, Donna. You're next. You're next. Wednesday, the grand jury's meeting, they're going to indict you with murder. You might want to think about your options. Go and strangely, she was Googling or looking up on the internet non-extradition countries, strangely, and bought a ticket to one. Vietnam via Dubai. Also, Dubai, non-extradition. No extradition treaty with America. So she got picked up as soon as that plane took off and she landed in Dubai. It would have been very hard to bring her back from Dubai, let alone Vietnam. So, yeah, he's got some real explaining to do. And you notice, I believe that he was supposed to come back on STS. He was supposed to be doing more interviews, I believe. Maybe it wasn't on STS, but it was. And all of them got canceled after that. It was Court TV, maybe. That was the end of Dan Rashbaum's PR campaign for Donna Adelson. So back to Jack Campbell. So I understand that he's being nice and by looking sportsmanship-like or sportsman-like, saying that it's no one's fault. But the fact that Dan Rashbaum never got a signed waiver ever, that this was never in any good, that this was never waived in any real way, is a major problem. And certainly, remember the hot mic moment I played where he says it's poor judgment on his part? Certainly poor judgment at minimum on his part. Poor judgment clouded by greed, clouded by an enmeshed relationship with Donna Adelson's, with your convicted murderer client and your accused murderess client. Back to Chuck Campbell here. How's everybody doing? This kind of stuff. Oh, I mean, these lawyers, enough of it. Shakespeare may have had a point, right? He said, first, let's kill all the lawyers. First thing we do is kill all the lawyers.
We had a waiver. We had brought it before the court. We had a colloquy, which is just a conversation between Miss Adelson and the court. We had, people. We have done everything that we could think to do to stop this from happening. From best we can tell, Charlie Adelson, who clearly I've never spoken with, changed his mind, or certainly his lawyer represented that despite the earlier waiver, he no longer agreed to that waiver. I don't have the advantage of knowing what Mr. Adelson was thinking. So while I blame Mr. Adelson for us being here in the first place, I can't speak to why he changed his mind or why he withdrew the waiver.
I know you spoke to the emotional impacts that this continuance has had on the community, as well as folks that work here for the state attorney. Can you kind of speak to, I know we said cost doesn't matter, but about how much all of this will cost to kind of push back? Yeah, we're tens of thousands of dollars. We're calculating it now, but you had people who, everything from flights to the, like I said, the audio video people I bring in, very advanced. Y'all, we don't normally have headphones for every juror. We do in this case. We don't generally have the courtroom set aside for this many weeks. We did in this case. So there was an extensive amount of effort internally. I've been involved in a lot of trials. I've not been involved in anything bigger than this one. Georgia Kappelman.
Oh, so did he say headphones and not cell phones? And I heard it. Now I'm hearing headphones and not cell phones. I thought he said cell phones at one point, but maybe I just heard headphones. My apologies. Correction. Correction. Definitely a need for correction there. Try to keep it accurate on this channel, certainly.
Is one of the best trial attorneys in America. The amount of effort that she and Miss Dugan, Sarah Catherine put forward, Jason Newland, who I think you all know, I mean, they lived this case not just for a week, but for months and months. They planned their very lives as travel and to get themselves. To me, it's similar to the Olympics. They plan every 4 years for one race that will last 10, 15 seconds. That's not unlike what was done by our.
Don't tell Charlie Adelson. Didn't he say that this was the Super Bowl? No, now we have Jack Campbell calling it the Olympics, that that Georgia Kappelman and Sarah Dugan trained for 4 years for this trial, like the Olympics. Which is odd to say. I thought Jack Campbell, I guess I'm in the minority, thought he came off well in this interview in general. Obviously, I have little nitpicky things to say about just the little bit of the language in which he talks about victims' families and their healing. It's very nitpicky. But it does, I would say, if I were one of the families of the 100 murder cases that they're trying this year in Tallahassee, this court, I would be upset, saying why aren't they training for my case like that? I understand that this is a more complicated case, et cetera, but I mean, I would hope that they train this hard for all of their cases. They work this hard for all of their cases.
Team is that they had been planning getting ready for this case in that type of intensity so that they could give the best effort. And I know the judge was bringing that same thing. I know the defense was going to bring that same effort. I know that the 12 people, whoever they're going to be, who are the jurors, are going to bring that effort. This is an important case for this community. We are literally being watched by the world. I think it's a wonderful example of the fact that we have a good criminal justice system in this country, because I'm getting contacted. I get emails regularly internationally about the way this case has been investigated, the outstanding work of the Tallahassee Police Department, the outstanding work by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the outstanding work by our prosecutors. And so I'm very proud of the product that we have. I'm very proud of the people, the team that we have. Financially, yeah, it's going to be tens of thousands of dollars, but it's really the emotional cost of how often people can get to that level of preparedness, emotionally and physically and intellectually. She's great, but I just rather not have to redline her quite so often.
When you say costing tens of thousands.
So, yeah, I mean, here's Jack Campbell admitting what I've been saying on this channel and why I think Wendy Adelson will get arrested once when she's done being used as a witness in this case. It's because he recognizes, saying, this case has the eyes of the world on it. Not all the eyes of everyone in the world, but people are watching this case. It makes our office look very good. I'm aware, and there's a public will to arrest Wendy. And we may not win that case, but I think they're going to try. I don't think it's a usual kind of case. I think that prosecutors sometimes, I feel at least, overestimate what they need to win a case. They like slam dunk cases. They like going to court with slam dunk cases. And, Wendy may not get a conviction, but I would hope she would, try for it at least. Make her sweat a little. Let's see. I think it's obvious to my mind. Doesn't make sense any other way in my mind that she wasn't involved. No one else knew Dan's schedule. Why would she drive by the crime scene? I don't feel she just got lost. She's changed her reasoning why she drove by. There's too many pieces. There's too many, to quote Dan Rashbaum, too many puzzle pieces that add up to the entire family being involved. But Harvey is someone I just don't feel they can prove. But Wendy, I think they could get a conviction with the right jury.
Thousands of dollars, is that the court's expenses?
No, that's this office's expenses. The costs are going to be more. The court would be more than that. But I'm talking about the state attorney's office. We have the burden of proof, so we are the ones who most of the evidence and witnesses we call. And so most of that has been done by this office. And just like you would assume, it's a lot like a duck. What you all are seeing is what's on top of the water. We're paddling pretty hard underneath the water. And so, there are flights, there is travel, there are hotels, there are 100, depositions. There's a lot of work that's done that isn't seen in the courtroom, getting things ready. And once again, that has been done over the last 3 or 4 months. Certainly through the summer, we've been getting ready for this trial that was going to begin here in September.
Mr. Morris mentioned after court on Tuesday that with him taking over as lead counsel and Mr. Rashbaum leaving, that it could open the door to plea negotiations or negotiations with the state.
Sure. Mr. Morris is a great trial attorney. I think if he says that, I look forward to it. Once again, there's a reason why plea negotiations are supposed to be kept confidential. And so I'm not going to speak as to it at all. I can tell you, probably 99% of the cases this office handles are resolved through some type of negotiation. So we're willing to negotiate and talk. Have no fear. Nothing will be done without consultation with the Markel family. So there's nothing secret that will be done. we don't talk about it because, candidly, for negotiations to go back and forth, the law requires it to be confidential on both sides. So
There's no plea deal that they could give. And I know that Alex Morris may get to Donna's greed and say, look, your best option now. And also with her deep faith in Dan Rashbaum, without Dan Rashbaum, the super genius by your side, right? I'm sure she sees him that way because she picked him. That you might be best to see what your options are with plea deals. And the Markels aren't going to go for anything less than 20, 30 years, I wouldn't think, for Donna, unless she gives up Wendy or something. Which I don't know. I just don't see any of them ever admitting guilt. Not Charlie. I think they all want to get away with it. They want their rights to be violated, right? They want some kind of technicality, out on a technicality. And maybe this was the idea with getting Dan Rashbaum in the first place. See, you had a conflict of interest. Both of our convictions need to go. I mean, it was convenient. I think Donna picked him because she really felt comfortable and he was in the circle of trust. He became her confidant, her everything, her rock. I mean, you can hear her on those jailhouse calls. Did you talk to Dan? Did you talk to Dan about it? Yeah. Yeah. What did Dan say? Is that what Dan said? Is that what Dan said? He's like her Svengali. So I don't think, no. I mean, they can talk about this, but this is where I'm going to end it. I'm not going to play too much more of this. I think you guys get the point. This is really the last fascinating thing that he says. Although at the end, he does talk, the link is in the description of this video. He does talk about the undercover who was in the bump being in an undisclosed location that they have to pull him out of, and that he's still living under an assumed different name, it sounds like. Did I just make that up? Or he's living in secret because was involved in a lot of really dangerous cases. He said not so much this one, but he was an undercover in a lot of gang scary cases, and he would have to be pulled out of an undisclosed location to testify in this trial.
So if he wants to begin negotiations, I would love to do negotiations. We negotiate on the overwhelming majority of our cases. I look forward to talking to him about it. Once again, Ms. Kappelman would be the point on that, but I'm sure I will be consulted. But there's nothing secret that's going to happen where this would be. And I think the fear of a lot of people watching this interview or reading your paper, if there was a negotiation, it would all come out before it was finalized. So we would notify the media, the family would know, and there's no secret deal. Everything will eventually come out, but it begins in earnest through conversations back and forth. And so that would be just like we don't tell y'all while we're investigating a crime what our evidence is. We eventually show you our evidence in trial. That would be same with a plea negotiation, just like anytime y'all come and see us pleading a case out. The terms of the plea are all discussed. The family is consulted, and we'd be able to talk about it. But it's way too early at this point to anticipate if the negotiations will go anywhere and what any terms would be. That would be speculation at this point. And I heard that interview and watched it and was interested when I saw it. And so I look forward to talking to him. I've worked with him for 20 years now. I trust him when he says that that's an effort that he would like to take. Sounds good to me. But candidly, Ms. Adelson continues to have her Sixth Amendment right, so she may hire a totally different lawyer, or she could fire Mr. Morris. I don't know what she's going to do. And so I've learned over the years, don't count on anything until it's final. And so,
she's a loose cannon at this point. We don't know where she's going to go. But he says, he goes on to say, I'm not going to play any more of this. I think you guys get the point. But he goes on to say, let me just see if it's in the next 2 seconds. This is pretty much like what I thought was the shocker of the interview.
So that's where right now, everybody, I think to use his word, he's regrouping. My guess is that she is too. We certainly are. And we'll take the next step when the next step gets there.
I know that yesterday when I checked, checked the roster, Katie, Charlie, and Lewis are still in the Leon County Jail. I know you don't have authority over the jail. Do you know about how long they'll be there?
So we don't talk about jail transports. You're right. I don't run the jail. The sheriff does.
Yeah, we're not gonna telegraph to the gangs when Charlie's gonna be moved so he can get himself killed. No thanks. No thanks, earnest reporter there. But he goes on to say, unless I missed it, that we've offered life sentences for murder, for bleeding out to murder. Basically, like, save your money, Donna, for the trial and plead guilty to murder. And we agree to give you a life sentence with no parole. I mean, so I think that's what it is in Florida. So, yeah, that's that. I mean, I just don't think she's going to be pleading out, like I've said. So that is, I thought it was an interesting interview. I think he's really trying to polish things over. Like I said, it wasn't a good look for Tallahassee, and certainly not the state's attorney's office, this whole thing, even though it really wasn't their fault. They couldn't have said, Donna, you can't do this. That was really up to Dan Rashbaum, and they brought up as many issues as they could. I just don't understand. Like, I mean, I'm a repeating record or parrot or something today. I think Murder by Maestro said in the chat, it's like saying I walked my dog all up into the point that he poops in front of the judge's table. Like, yeah, we have a signed agreement. Everything's ready to go. Yeah, it's all okay. So I'm going to end this episode the way I do most of my episodes about this case, with a victim impact letter. This is it from Charlie Adelson's trial to the Honorable Stephen Everett. I met Dan Markel on my first day at Harvard Law School in 1997. We were assigned to the same small group and quickly became friends. Danny was one of my oldest friends, close from those first days in Cambridge to the last several days preceding his death when we both lived in Tallahassee. He was my classmate, my dance partner, my constant, my advisor, my confidant, my dear friend. We shared past, present, and future. A classmate remembered Danny and I becoming fast friends our first week of law school. You were like two pieces of the same puzzle finally reunited. Until his death, through loves and losses, children, distance, and closeness, that remained true for us. We loved and supported each other. He was a blessing in my life. From many walks around Harvard Square and Tallahassee's Lake Ella, to nights of music and dinners, wherever we happened to be in the U.S., intellectual discourse and debate, discussions of Judaism, meeting up for our children to play together, and countless hours sharing our deepest of truths and understandings over meals, on the phone, or at his home. He was my dear, beloved friend. We watched each other grow and evolve over the years, providing each other advice and encouragement. He lived every moment with joy and loved mightily. When Danny was killed, there was a tremendous outpouring of grief, love, and support from friends, family, colleagues, students, and communities, not only in Tallahassee, where he lived, in New York, where he often traveled, or at Harvard, where he attended college and law school, but from across the nation, Canada, Israel, and around the world. Even today, people continue to speak of his life and how he personally touched and challenged their lives. His voice, his hugs, his heart are missed beyond description. How could one man have such an impact on so many? He was not an actor, politician, nor preacher. How could so many feel his loss so deeply? His colleagues and students deeply respected him. His family and extended family of friends loved him unconditionally for his unique, genuine, witty, brilliantly sarcastic, loving, affectionate, intelligent, sometimes goofy, empathetic, kind, adventurous soul that he was. He was indeed a prolific writer, a brilliant mind, an innovative scholar, professor, mensch, which is like means good guy in Yiddish, and friend who was devoted to his family and faith community. His contributions to the legal and academic communities are well documented in more than 30 published articles in his writing and commentaries, on Prof's blog and in the minds and hearts of the countless colleagues and students he inspired and influenced over the years, whether as a leader at Harvard Hillel, a resident tutor at Lowell House during law school days, a traveling fellow and scholar, or a professor of law at Florida State University. Jewish or not, if you were within traveling radius and Shabbat dinner or any dinner was to be had, you were invited to join Danny. Despite very diverse circles of friends around the world, he managed to be there for his friends. He has been referred to as the Great Connector, an internet before there was an internet. He has always been referred to as the Johnny Carson of academics, inviting you to the stage and then encouraging and inspiring you to reach new personal levels. He has been called a collector of people, the kind of friend who you could not speak to in years, and in a moment of contact, you picked up exactly where you left off. He was quick to foster your potential, to challenge you towards your best, to support you through the best and worst of times. Danny was a seeker of truth and justice, an exceedingly insightful man, unafraid to hear and believe the hardest of truths, unafraid to tell you what he was thinking, unafraid to love and support his friends, unafraid to show emotion or ask for help. He was truly a man of wisdom and discernment. He cared about you and was fully present wherever he was, whenever he was with you. He easily created an emotional intimacy that led to deep personal connections. He had a dozen nicknames and terms of endearment for those that he loved. Danny's heart was his boys, his little bears, delicious ones, wonder balls, and magical ones. He was in awe of them. He loved teaching them about his deep faith, tradition, ritual, and importance of community, family, and friends. He was a shamelessly proud and involved father, from before their birth until his death, and every single moment in between. Danny glowed with love and pride in his boys. As someone who appreciates fine art, Danny found no better art than those of his sons, and their artwork was frequently displayed throughout his home. As a music lover, Danny found no sweeter sound than that of his boys singing. Wherever he could, whenever he could, often daily, He would go to preschool just to share snack time with them. He was one of the best fathers you could ever meet, and his boys deserve to know him. On a personal level, having experienced both the murder of a close childhood friend in 1982 and personal violence as an adult, I was cut to the core by Danny's murder. It tore open old wounds and removed any sense of peace or safety I had struggled to rebuild. He believed in me and supported me in healing from trauma when some others did not. He was a comfort, a shelter in the storms of life, a place of refuge. His needless death left me without a safe haven and tore a hole in my heart. The month before he died, he took me out to dinner for my birthday, and we shared our latest hopes and dreams. His violent loss was jarring. The knowledge that while I was working less than 2 miles away, my beloved friend had been gunned down in the supposed safety of his home garage was heartbreaking. It also meant that the house where I had spent so many hours with my friend, where I had felt loved and understood, now felt tainted and unsafe. Indeed, safety was an illusion if in broad daylight such a monstrous crime could occur. Every new detail of his murder added to painful disbelief and a loss of ability to trust those once thought known. My children cried when I told them what had happened. Having to explain to my children that Danny was murdered in the house where they had played with his children was unthinkable. Tallahassee itself became associated with a lack of safety and peace for our family, and we moved from the area soon after his loss, never wishing to return. Watching their mother grieve deeply affected my children greatly. Danny's loss continues to deeply affect his families and friends around the world. It impacted the Tallahassee community, the state of Florida, and the nation. The callous disregard for life and cold, calculation of his murder, in addition to these long 9 years waiting for everyone involved to be brought to justice, have left his family and friends grieving indefinitely with an open wound, seekers of justice disheartened, and shocked members of the public yearning for the full truth so that such a self-serving, premeditated, heinous act will never be viewed as inconsequential and repeated. No combination of words, however eloquent, can fully capture Danny's spirit, can fully convey his passion for life, can adequately pay him full tribute. Danny gave a little bit of himself to everyone he touched, and he remains a blessing in their hearts. His memory brings joy, peace, and healing. Danny was a dear friend to so many and to me. I love him always, and I will miss him forever. For all who knew him, his loss leaves a void that cannot be filled. Dan Markel was simply irreplaceable. Sincerely, Tamara Demko. That's what I have for today. Please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share this episode, leave me a comment or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And I'll be back on Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Have a fantastic night, everyone. Thanks for listening.
what a stitch you're in. You plotted a murder, cause you wanted to raise your daughter's kid. Tallahassee is just a stop on the way to civilization. Miami is where all the fancy people are at. The TV is about 5. You can't get away from that. Two-toe, tay-toe, hoo-ho, you know the guy you pay, and you can't get away from that. Oh, Donna, what a stitch you're in. You thought jail was just for the little people, but now you're so blankets with the locked up crew. You're a grandmother in lockdown, and your one-way ride to freedom you blew. What a stitch you're in. Your family are exiled from the social circles you swam in. We all know you never made that banana bread or offered to babysit for Dan, but you'll soon be making license plates and thinking about what could have been.